and I welcome you all to Local Business Network, which has been launched this year. Our vision is to build a successful networking model to support the local and indigenous businessmen, entrepreneurs. Mission is to generate sustainable sales models through referral model for all members. And our goal is to reach out to entrepreneurs or businessmen from different fields and imbibe in them networking model for local economic upscale. We have created Local Business Network in order to create an ecosystem and right environment for promoting economic empowerment of our local people today and for generations to come. Today, we have come up with a webinar on the topic Business Opportunities in COVID Times, the Northeast India Perspective. The esteemed speakers in the panel today are Dr. Sriparna Borua, who is the head of the Center of Industrial Extension IIE. She has 33 years of work experience in management education and in small and medium enterprise development. Dr. Barua has represented Northeast India in national and India in various international forums and conferences and lead business delegations globally. And Mr. Anirban Gupta, who is the co-founder and strategic advisor at THRITI, a national level not-for-profit promoting entrepreneurship as a solution to poverty alleviation and socio-economic progress in our country. He is the co-founder of Tambul Place Marketing Private Limited, and he is also the visiting faculty at various B schools like XIMB, TASE, IILM, Amity University, etc. This webinar will be moderated by Dr. Vasavi Acharya, who is the founder chairperson of ECDF and DNA Foundation for Children and Women Welfare. She is the managing director of Inner Eye Foundation Private Limited and Tender Petals Preschool. So now I hand over Dr. Vasavi to start the session.
Thank you, Indrani. So I welcome our esteemed speakers today, Dr. Sriparna and Anirban, who has joined us in spite of the busy schedules on a working day. Thank you so much for being here with us in our first webinar of the Local Business Network. And I welcome all our attendees today and those who have joined us in FP Live. And I really think that this is going to be a very fruitful session with a lot of takeaways. So without wasting any time, let me ask my first question to Dr. Sriparna. Dr. Sriparna, you have had more than 3 years, decades of experience in facilitating and creating startup ecosystem in Assam and Northeast India, and you have been deeply involved with MSME and the entire process of entrepreneurial growth in the region. Tell us about the entrepreneurship scenario in Northeast India in the pre-COVID times in terms of business opportunities and growth. In the sense, what, now COVID has set in and so there are a lot of hiccups, but what was our scenario? Let us look into it at the beginning.
Thank you, Vasavi. Very interesting question indeed. Pre-COVID, what was the scenario as far as entrepreneurship and startup is concerned, and that too in a region like Northeast India. See, having worked in this space for more than 3 decades, almost 2 decades now, what we have seen is the last, just pre-COVID, maybe look at last 4 or 5 years, the ecosystem was actually evolving in Northeast. Let me just a little bit go back to, specify as to what changes I had seen. If you look at maybe even 10 years back, who were the people looking at entrepreneurship? We found that most of the time it was any boy or a girl would come to look at entrepreneurship as a career option. Particularly, I'm referring this to the Northeastern region. Someone who had no other option. Someone who was looking at it that suppose I don't get a job, maybe then I will look at entrepreneurship as a career option. So that was the scenario. So the moment they got into something else, so they attend programs and they would just go off, they just keep on waiting as for it. It was like a plan B for them. And so that was the scenario, and that had a lot of impact in the type of enterprises which came up in this region. Because what used to happen is when you have people who are average in studies, more from the vernacular medium, etc., so that it has an impact on the type of industries which were coming, the type of enterprises which were coming up in this region. So they were basically Me Too sort of enterprises, all at a very, very micro level, I would say at a tiny level. So they were not able to scale up while we had numbers that they were not scaled. But if you look at 5, 6 years back, along with the rest of India, while some of the definitely metros had made a lot of headway, this part of the region also saw some changes, proactive role being played by government, and the other end is that not, jobs not available, and also having an impact, seeing, that is the you see metros what is happening, so that has a spillover effect also in regions like this. And I would say more because the state governments had started becoming active everywhere. In the government of India started its startup policy. Each state started having their entrepreneurship and startup policy. So a lot of people who were never looking at entrepreneurship started looking at entrepreneurship possibly as a career option. This was across different segments. People who were just out of college, then there was other segment, people who have worked elsewhere, rest of India, who thought that, okay, now that the state is giving us opportunity, can we come back? So these are some of the people who had experience, who have the requisite expertise in the area. So when these sort of people started looking at coming back to their state, so this coming back phenomena was something very interesting, which had just started to happen. And if I relate my own experience, I was teaching for a very long in the management institute. So all my students who were way back, maybe 25 years back, who had graduated, maybe they have about 15, 20 years of experience, all based in different metros. So they started looking there. I would get a call almost every week, someone saying that I would like to leave a job, or what is a scheme which is there. So this sort was a thing which was happening. So very, very positive on the note of what was happening in the ecosystem. And if we look at the entire value chain of enterprise creation, we have enterprise happening at the grassroots level. We have enterprise happening at the MSME level, and then we also have startup enterprise at the startup level. So if we look at the entire value chain, we would find that at the grassroots level, all these, SHGs which were formed, they were becoming more and more active, thanks to a lot of cluster development program which was happening, a lot of exposure which people got in terms of attending exhibitions, design interventions through various projects. So at the grassroots level also, people were ready in terms of taking it's continued to remain as most of the time as a secondary occupation, but then people started, a lot of enterprise happened at the grassroots level. People who were at the household level, they started graduating and going to the micro level. Then we have at the MSME level also a lot of interesting enterprises came up. And of course, the third segment, which is a very, very recent phenomena, maybe just about 4 years back, since last 4 years back, the startup ecosystem started happening. When you looked at innovative ideas, when you look at technology as an enabler. So this is something pre-COVID. It was just, a very, very interesting phenomena which had started happening. And to complement that, I don't know how much time I have, Vasavi. I can go on and on. How much
Yes.
time do I have? Yeah, maybe
Uh,
just another 2 minutes, and I'll wind up.
yes.
Yeah. And if you look at the other aspect of the COVID, the ecosystem, which is the colleges, institutions, they also started becoming very proactive. One reason is that employment, uh, getting a job became more and more challenging while we're talking about demographic dividend. But this demographic dividend can remain as a dividend only when we can give jobs to people. So while jobs are not available, so this one option was that why don't you start giving, creating jobs for others. So for that, the institutions started becoming very proactive. A lot of incubation centers have come up. One or two have emerged, but then this incubation center itself created an environment in the institutions where, people started looking at entrepreneurship seriously. And so through our experience in IIE, we had, most of the colleges, we started doing a lot of faculty development program on entrepreneurship for college teachers. So they became our brand ambassadors, going back to the colleges. So overall, if I would like to say pre-COVID, it was a very, very encouraging, encouraging environment which was happening. The ecosystem was starting to facilitate and make enterprises happen. Incubations started playing an important role. I'm sure it's going to play even a more important role in days to come. So that is what was happening. And in states like, in looking at entire Northeast, Assam, of course, is there, but even states like Manipur, states like Arunachal, Mizoram, there also, if you go whichever state you go, you find that there are definitely startups and incubation centers playing an active role. And the smallest state that we have, Sikkim, of course, is extremely proactive as far as creating startups and entrepreneurs are concerned. With that, I would like to wind up now with your question.
Thank you, Dr. Shiporna. This gives us a clear picture that yes, entrepreneurship was kind of was an option for those who had no other options in terms of jobs or something. But now entrepreneurship is no more an option; it is a choice. And we have seen a lot of young people coming up, and they are doing their startups and all of that. So thank you for this insight, and I would talk to you more about it, like what are the new startups and what are the new ideas that we can look into now, as of now. But let me ask Mr. Anirban. Mr. Anirban, I had known him through Her and Now program, and I was in one of the first cohorts. I was lucky enough to be mentored by him. So, Mr. Anirban, you had been handholding and strategically building up an ecosystem for women entrepreneurs through the Her and Now program in Northeast India. What do you think are the opportunities for business for the women in Northeast India? You can, talk about business opportunities in the urban areas and also in the rural areas. So, and also I would want to, want you to talk about what do they need to know when they plan a startup? Because today we have a lot of people joining us who are planning a startup.
Thank you, Vasavi. I think the question, what you've asked about the opportunities for women entrepreneurs in the region and specifically in the Northeast and otherwise also. So I would not like to give the answer from the perspective that which sectors are going to be good, or those you can get in all those McKinsey reports and all the reports, the different kinds of studies being done. But what I would like to talk about is that the opportunities are actually threefold now. Looking at three elements of it. So one, looking at Northeast. So there needs to be an understanding that Northeast has a natural advantage in a lot of things. And all those who are thinking of entrepreneurship or delving into or plunging into entrepreneurship, they need to look at what are the advantages of Northeast and play on the advantages rather than trying to bring something from outside and running it in the Northeast. Northeast, having worked in Northeast for around 15 years, I feel it's a special place. It has its own mind. And you can't just bring in the Bangalore model or the Gurgaon model and run it in Northeast. It's not going to work. It works in its own way. So that's one aspect. And hence, looking into local enterprises, the kind of enterprises which are very ethnic to the Northeast and how it can be taken to a larger level, talking about growth in all of that is something that needs to be looked into. And it may be anything. It may be handloom, handicraft, it may be tourism, whatever are they. Also, there are opportunities into looking into sectors where things have not been working in the Northeast in certain senses. So what new can be done? What can be the new thing which can be done? I have been interacting with some of the IT entrepreneurs in Northeast, and I really love the newness that they bring in. They are not just trying to get the idea from Bangalore and running it here, or Hyderabad and running it here. They are trying to do new things for the region. So that's important. Apart from Northeast, the other aspect which I feel is going to be pretty strong and pretty important is rural. So the rural-urban divide in the Northeast is very thin. To say that and Imphal is a hardcore urban area, and then you just go 10 kilometers and then you're almost there into the rural peripheries of Impal. So that reality is there. And with the reverse migration happening, and it really got highlighted that what is the need for the rural economies to be self-sufficient, and in my days when I was studying, and I remember this from one of the workshops that we had done with Professor Fansalkar from Doradri Tata Trust. He said that our rural economies is like a leaky bucket where there are a lot of holes. So there is resources coming in and there's a lot of resources which are going out. And any person, any individual trying to work in building the local economies has to plug in these leakages. And the best way to plug in these leakages is and the best pluggers are the entrepreneurs, the local entrepreneurs. They are the ones who are going to plug these leakages and bring the local economy levels higher. So, and that is something that I feel needs to be focused. And we are also, in Dhriti also, we are trying to launch a whole new program called Seeding Grampreneurs, with the focus in looking at how can village and township, small township enterprises be promoted, supported, and a ecosystem for that is created. So in doing so, we actually studied a lot of economies. And one of the things that we realized is that the last big economy that came into being was China. And the Chinese development from the 1982 to 96 was all based on the Kan and Xiang industries, which is basically Kan is village in Chinese and Xiang is townships. So it is important that we look into this model. It will surely not be the exact replica of the Chinese Kan and Xiang industries, but there has to be some, because if you look into the demography, if you look into the size, population, we are more similar to China than any other developed economy. So looking at that is important. And so first I talked about Northeast, second I talked about rural, the importance, the focus points and the opportunities being there. And the third is for me, I've been working in the space of women entrepreneurship. And for me, the third focus area will be women. And why I say so is this pandemic has brought into, and this is a little bit of a psychometric understanding, psychological understanding, that the pandemic has broken the back of the aggressive business types, the male or the masculine business methodologies. It has broken the back of it. And now there is a need for what in certain psychological terms is called as feminine business methodologies, which is more about compassionate, passion-based. So they usually get into something which is more about the passion. There's a lot of flexibility. So the uncertainties of the time has brought into fore the need for that flexibility. It is also observed that a lot of the activities that women entrepreneurs or women look into, they look at preservation of culture and ethnicity, which blends very well with the entire ethos of Northeast. So, these three things blending is what I feel is where the opportunities are. And I feel that the rest the entrepreneurs who are listening, they are weaving their stories. So I really believe in the power of the entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Thank you, Anirban. That was really insightful. And I think, yes, this is a very promising and interesting trend, of that you talked about, the passion, flexibility, compassion, that entrepreneurs, basically it's it's not about the hardcore processing of the business, but it's a spirit that we need to keep alive. Coming to Dr. Shriparna, recently, the NERIS 1.0 summit had, just got over. And I feel this is a really, really landmark event in terms of supporting startup in Northeast India. Well, I was involved in it as a member of the advisory committee service sector, and while we were scrutinizing, the new projects that were coming up, the startups, it was really interesting to see many new ideas that have sprouted up from this region. So, Dr. Sriparna, would you like to share a little about NERES and also your observation as regards the new business and startup opportunities in these times? Basically, I would not say post because COVID is on. We do not know when it is going to get over, but in these times of for the
Thank you,
startups.
Vasavi. Definitely, it'll be a great pleasure to talk about NERIS, something which is very close to my heart. So NERIS is, for the others who are here, it's the Northeast Regional Entrepreneurship and Startup Summit. An idea which we had which had germinated maybe about 3 years back. And for that idea to actually go through, we had to go through a lot of corridors of power to convince them that there's a need for something like this. The idea of actually NERIS came in from the fact that the entrepreneur goes through a cycle. Now this cycle starts with, when we talk about a startup, we always say that, what is the VC funding they've got? What is the impact funding they've got? But somehow, last 4 or 5 years, there's been so many seminars, workshops happening on investors coming, addressing startups, but hardly, that has fructified into any sort of venture funding actually happening. If you look at the, outcome of all these, then we try to look into why this was not happening. And we found that any venture funder, seed fund, even I'm not even going to venture fund, even if you talk about seed funding, they require ideas which are good and which are scalable. And they always ask for a proof of concept. Now, to have a proof of concept, you need to invest something and then work on it, and then only you can say that my idea works. Here, what was happening is they're all first generation entrepreneurs, and the culture here that we have is that most of the time, more than 90% of the people are people who are don't have that entrepreneurial orientation. They're basically all into service, and everyone wants their children to get into some sort of a secure job. So that is, of course, it's mostly there in Pan India, but here in this region, it was even more. And that and you find that as youth from this region also, they don't have that hard, they don't have the zeal to work very hard, because availability of easy money was there was all these insurgency, etc. happening. So basically that culture was not there at all. But even for people who were serious and they wanted to start their own enterprise, they wanted some amount of fun to play upon and then have a proof of concept. So we thought that if some grant fund can be given to these people who can have a proof of concept. So basically entire idea of NERIS was to Northeast Regional Entrepreneurship and Startup Summit is to look at good ideas, give them support so that they give them a grant fund so that they can have a proof of concept. Then they are ready for at least going to the next level, which can be a seed fund. We are also right now working on the seed fund aspect of it with Ministry of Donor, etc. So if they can, seed fund would be further support, and then further acceleration support through venture funding, etc. So NERIS was conceived to help an entrepreneur go through the entire entrepreneurial cycle. Now, having said that, we finally, when we got it, so we thought that how do we reach out to people? So we tried to reach out to the entire Northeastern region. We call for ideas. The entire thing started by calling for ideas. We reached out to more than 1,500 people. We reached out to more than 5,000, through which 1,500 people had actually registered to come up with their ideas. And then about 675 had actually completed their entire registration process. So we went through a process of screening, and what we also did was we identified certain sectors which have relevance to Northeast. Sectors like, of course, handloom, handicraft, agro and allied, then tourism, media and entertainment, because a lot of people are doing freelancing in this part of the region on media and entertainment. Waste management was another sector. Then, of course, ITES, IT-enabled services. Then the service sector, including education, retail, etc., and the beauty and wellness sector. So these are the 8 sectors that we've identified, and we asked people to pitch in give their ideas on these 8 sectors which we have identified. And so we went about asking for ideas, went through a proper screening process. From the 675, we came to 200. From 200, where, Vasavi, you were also involved in the initial screening process. From 200, we came down to 50. The 50, we again, they did their pitching, and finally, thanks to COVID, we were initially supposed to give 5 lakhs each to 20 people, but because of COVID, we were doing it digitally. And so then we could give out, 5 lakhs each to 30 aspiring enterprises. The most and from these 30, 200, the database of 700 that we have, we've understood a lot of things, which is more important. NERIS is an event, but our understanding about what happens in what is required for the entrepreneurship ecosystem to develop has been a key learning for us. For example, from the 200 who had come in, we had screened, we found that from the 200, it's not that other ideas were not good. There were many ideas which were really good. But then possibly when you go for a startup, you need to have communication skills, etc. You need to have a little bit of confidence building. So our next stage would be to pull up those 200 so that then they can come to the next level also. We also found that a lot of people who did not require a grant fund, but they actually required acceleration fund. So we also identified a lot of enterprises which requires acceleration fund so that we can easily take them to the next level. So these are some of the very key learnings and understanding, and we would be shortly announcing the NERIS 2.0. That's an announcement which I would like to give. Of course, the formal sanction has not come in, but it's coming in very soon because people are convinced there that, now we have a data to show that this is actually happening. Otherwise, often it happens in most of the incubations, etc., that people keep on skipping from one incubation to the other, and the parameters for we are saying that this is an enterprise creation also is something like a little bit of help that I've given, and I say there's another successful enterprise. So we are trying to be very, very specific on what sort of help they require. We are trying to develop our own model for it, and I think this is going to eventually possibly help in facilitating the entire ecosystem. And on this first level, it has been like our proof of concept for stating that what is required for entrepreneurship development actually for this region. And even for the 700 that we had, we are going to do an entrepreneurship development program for them. So we have real good ideas, which are very, very positive. And last thing which I would like to say is that, we are, as an institute, we also do a lot of cluster development programs. So, giving these startups the idea that, you do not need to, as Anirban was also mentioning, you don't need to look at India for ideating, rest of India. You can look at these grassroots level projects, and these projects itself become your basic areas in which you identify a problem and try to solve the problem. And that's when you connect the people from technology background to the grassroots. That's when the entire the value chain gets sort of cemented, and you actually start having good ideas. So that is something I personally strongly feel about it. And opportunities are there in every sector. If you just look at the number, we have more than 60 clusters being implemented all throughout Northeast. Every cluster is actually a opportunity. What about introducing technology? What about doing waste management in the cluster? What about creating a platform for the cluster? So, there are basically a lot of opportunities in the grassroots level itself. So it's a question of doing a little bit of research, finding what support is required, and then going ahead. So that's about NERIS and also the learnings that we've got from NERIS. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shiparna. And I would, really want to appreciate the process that that was used, to identify the businesses or the startups that had promises. Because, like you said, we generally get into a business because I started my, education venture when I was just 24. And because I come from a background where my mother is a professor, and we have no, we are probably I'm the first generation or second generation because my grandma was into traditional, weaving and all. But then I never met her at that time because I was studying in Delhi, so we did not know much about business, and it was very difficult for me, in fact, to share my story. it's been a very long journey, and there were not many mentors. But look at us now. Look at the amount of support that we get. Look at Harin now. Look at Neres. Look at other organizations, even who are supporting startups, who are supporting entrepreneurs, and they're showing the way forward. Because when we have mentors, it gets quite easy. That is what I have seen now. So there's a general trend that is happening, but not post, but now that the COVID is on, there's a lot of challenge that I can see even in our sector. I'm in the education industry. We are seeing a lot of limitations, a lot of challenges as of now, and I think that is for all the sectors that are that are facing the same kind of challenges. And this is basically a trickle down, because if I am having challenges, my employees are in the process affected. So, Mr. Anirban, I would want to ask you about how should, because I have been talking with a lot of entrepreneurs who are actually thinking of giving up, because they do not have enough fund, they do not have any way of generating funds. So what do you think we should do to outgrow this current limitation that we are faced with? And can you share some strategies with the entrepreneurs who has joined us today as to how to deal with the situation? We know that we are going to cross over, but this is the hardest time, the last bit.
So, Vasavi, I have been an entrepreneur myself. So, the reality is, be it pandemic or maybe in normal times also, crisis comes. An entrepreneur will always go through the ups and downs.
Yes.
And they are not strangers to this crisis. Entrepreneurs have always been, they know this. And somehow I also feel that the entrepreneurs thrive in this uncertainty. This uncertainty is a very important thing, because that's where they find their opportunities. That's where they are looking at, what will I do new? How will I change things? And so also what has happened, Savi, is a lot of established enterprises have failed during this period. They have either gone down, have failed, they are looking at moving out, re-strategizing. So in certain terms, the new entrepreneurs and the new people, they're in the same boat. So,
exactly,
everybody, in certain terms, they're in level playing field. I am in a bad situation. You are just starting with. There are certain similarities that we are already having. Also, the market. So if you look at pre-COVID to COVID and then post-COVID scenarios, there was somehow a situation that almost the market seemed saturated. Kisme ghuse? What should I do? Everything seems to be very settled. And suddenly, with this pandemic, everything. So the market has become unserved. Market is becoming. So whole new set of opportunities coming out. So an entrepreneur, it's also psychological. So entrepreneur starts looking at this as opportunities. This is the real time. And ultimately, it's a zero-sum game. किसी का business नीचे जा रहा है, तो किसी के लिए opportunities नया बन रहा है. So it's a zero-sum game overall. But you talked about what are the kind of strategies that are required. And so one of the things, so there are a few that is working for a lot of people. They are trying all of this. So I'll mention all of it. Whatever works out for anybody, they will make their own mix. So one is innovation, looking at how are you going to do the same thing that you're doing innovatively, trying to look at different ways of doing it, different markets, serving different kinds of people. So that's one level of thought which is going on. The other thing which is happening is people are trying, because finances have become difficult. Neres coming at a very good time. However, finances are very difficult right now. Maybe at the grassroots level with the self-help groups. So microfinance is in a bad situation. It's more into a recovery mode than rather giving loans. Most of them are not into the loan giving mode right now, which means earning from the business has become very important. So trying new things to earn from the business, which even might be to diversify. I know of one of my juniors from college who was into the juice business. So he was doing, and he moved into the what do you call it, sanitizer business, because that was the need of it. So they were making adjustments accordingly. One of the things that I would suggest, and this is something that we have been understanding from the market, is that don't get into too much of loan or debt. Because debt at this point of time is mostly for loss financing rather than generating profits. And loss financing means that you're just making your situation worse. So hanging on is important, but don't get into too much of debt. That's what has been there. Try to save cash from the business. Cash is important right now. However, it's also very low. So trying to save it is important. So those who have been able to save cash are in a much better position right now. I do not know how much time will this go on, the recovery, how much time this recovery will take, but having cash is important. So in your bank, that is important in certain ways. And the last 3 ways that I'm going to talk of is scale down. You don't need to scale up right now. Times will be better, you can scale up. If need be, you can scale down. There's nothing wrong in scaling down. A lot of entrepreneurs are getting into psychological issues in trying to deal with this. I need to grow at the rate I was growing. Times have changed, reality has changed. You might not grow in that rate. It is fine. Diversify, you look into new options. That's also good. Don't worry. You might come back to your stronghold after a period of time. It's a game, it's a time play that you, and something that you talked about, Vasavi, and that can be also a good strategy, is shutting down. Shutting down, somehow in the entrepreneurial world, it is taken as failure. It can also be strategy. You have to remember that the reality is that the enterprises might die. Sometimes the entrepreneur needs to live on. The entrepreneur living will give the enterprise another chance, but the entrepreneur dying will not give, it will take time for the things to move. So even shutting down is not a bad strategy. Keep your mind open, look at the situation, look at the circumstances and take your decisions. And nobody better than the entrepreneur to take the decision. Everybody from outside can give hundreds of suggestions, but the entrepreneur is the person who is going through all of this. They know the market, they understand what scenario they are in, the realities of their bank balances and the realities of how much do they have to pay. So they need to take their call. So I think I would like to place it in this way, that these are the options. Think and select your options. Yeah.
Absolutely. Anirban, this is like rightly said, diversify, because I've seen my friends, shifting from one business to the next. So many have gone into wellness and health and food, different sectors. They have now started, exploring so that they can sustain and keep their ideas and things going. So coming to Dr. Shriparna, I would want to ask you, what are the business opportunities according to you that has come up in this time period, and what would you say to the new entrepreneurs, because there are lots who would want to start up something now, so what is your advice to them as of now? Mr. Anirban already talked about existing entrepreneurs who are facing problems, but then there are lots we meet, I want to do something, I want to start up something, probably they are not into any job, so they want to start something. So what is your advice to them?
What my advice would be that you look at which are the emerging. This COVID-19 is also throwing up a lot of opportunities from some of these sectors. Like every crisis opens up opportunity. Are we aware? I mean, first let us look at the crisis in 2008. That's when the Airbnb came in. A lot of companies came in through the crisis. So this crisis is also, while it's also been very, very kind to some of the sectors. And we all aware of sectors which have a lot of potential. Health definitely is one. Then your anything to do with software as a solution is a important area where there's throwing up technology is one of the biggest opportunity anyone with a technology can look at using technology as an enabler to solve problems for the emerging sectors, be it agro, be it health, these are sectors where you can easily. Now, gamification is another area. So basically what I would like to say is look at sectors which are shooting up. If you look at India during demonetization, it was a boom for the fintech sector. Now, if you look at COVID-19, it's become a boon for the edutech sector. So in the edutech sector itself, there's so much of opportunity. So anyone interested in education, of course, entrepreneurship always has to be related to the area of interest. An entrepreneur always has to look at the area in which he or she is passionate about, because one has to be really passionate about what he or she is doing. So just because a sector is showing up, immense potential doesn't mean that I will jump from any sector and go into that sector. Of course, that has to match my interest also. Otherwise, I cannot give my best. But look at sectors. If those sectors are some of the sectors which have are of your interest, you can look into that. So edutech definitely. Now, when we talk about edutech, look at the various ways in which you can get involved, right from creating platforms to building content to, you are from the education sector, so you will know the requirements which are there in the edutech sector. And when we look at our own specific local areas, you can have opportunities for solving something which is already done that and do it in your local environment. So that's one sector where you can look at. So health, definitely, right from telemedicine to creating solutions using IoT, etc. And we have seen in the last 5 months so many new startups have come out in the health sector. Look at the situation pre-COVID when we had a big challenge with PPE kits. And look at today, we are manufacturing 5 lakh PPE kits every day. So it is basically there. So there are entrepreneurs who are looking at every crisis as an opportunity, and they are also getting into new ideas. So this is my advice would be to look at your own interest and of course the sectors which are doing well. So that is one. And also supposing there are some sectors, for example, tourism. From Northeast, we have a lot of people in the tourism sector which were actually doing very well, but right now tourism looks really, it doesn't seem to have a future. But why not look at tourism at the local level? Why not think about community tourism? Because as situation becomes a little easier, people would definitely like to travel. And there's a lot of, I see opportunities, intra-state travel, because we are all from Northeast. But if you look at most of our friends and family, how many of us from Assam, unless your job demands, have visited all the 7 states of Northeast? So now people are looking at, can we go to Mizoram? Can we go to Arunachal? So that's an opportunity coming for business opportunity coming for people who are still interested in the travel industry. Instead of looking at nationally, local, international tourists, you can look at local tourists. Have again proof of concept. I'll keep using the word. Have a proof of concept. This is working. You can think about sericulture tourism. There's so much to see adventure tourism and adventure tourism, etc. Because there is that don't have the problem of contact. It can be quite contactless. It's in the environment and open environment. So those are opportunities which are there in some of these sectors. So aspiring entrepreneurs who want to looking at business opportunity, I think there is still a lot of opportunity. Always opportunity comes up at the time of crisis. Crisis itself throws up a lot of opportunity. And another thing which is happening, it's so much easier now to collaborate, so much more easier. Earlier, if we were thinking we actually need to travel and then talk to someone personally and then network, now everyone has got used to virtual mode of contact and conversation. So you can look at collaborations very, very easily. And I think one of the mantra which is required for both for aspiring as well as existing is to look at collaboration. That can be a very good way of having a nice co-founder, you might be you might be having the knowledge of the region, whereas you might not be be technology savvy. So why don't you get a co-founder who with that background, who has exposure, then you can start something to solve a problem here. And the last thing which I would like to say is agri is something we are all saying. Agri has a lot of opportunity. Agri doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to jump into the bandwagon of doing organic farming. So what about agri processing? What about using again technology at different phases? What about logistic solution for agriculture? What about marketing information for agriculture? So while some of the other developed states have all these things in place, there is an opportunity in this part of the region. So I think that's what, and ultimately I think all entrepreneurs, aspiring existing entrepreneurs, have to start with a belief that entrepreneurship is basically guitar at work. There's no answer. You keep on doing your work, you keep on doing your karma, and then don't think about what's going to happen. Work hard to just keep your mind is very important. So keeping your emotional quotient intact is extremely important during these difficult times, and at the same time working hard, trying to create a lean organization, because this is something again, a time when you're actually reflecting and looking back to your business model. So revisiting the business model is something I think most of you are doing. And then you find out that certain things which you would have otherwise never done, you're doing at this point of time in your life, and which is actually going to be a big push as days to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Shiparna. Absolutely. Mr. Anirban, would you want to add to this? Your perception and the new opportunities that you think are emerging at this point of time?
Yeah, in fact, so what we've been also talking to a lot of entrepreneurs is that, and new people who are coming into board, is to actually look into the trends pretty well, because what's happening is there was a trend which happened in the last 3 to 4 months, from March to let's say June, July. There was a trend, and that was a very with the lockdowns and everything. So a lot of businesses started thinking कि यही new normal होने वाला है, कि this is going to be. But with the economy opening up a little, things have changed a little bit again. So, prepare for the new normal, but don't be in a hurry to concretize your business models and look into it. Wait, because nothing has got into what the tide has not gone over. So if you make complete strategies based on that, you might be there might be just a second tide which you are into. So keep that flexibility on board. Then looking into the different trends. So the work trends have changed. How you are with your family, the trends have changed. Education trends have changed. Go into details of it. Try to look at, and it's not very difficult, because you just need to look at how things have changed for you and for the people around you. And there are new ideas which are emerging out of it. There are new opportunities which are emerging out of it. Place yourself there, invest yourself there. But again, I would say that don't be in a hurry. And this is something that I have seen, that there are people who have there are a few who have completely changed their business model just because of this. And then suddenly they are like, now what do you do? Those days are over. Those days of crisis are over. Now we are slowly moving towards normalcy, certain amount of normalcy. What do we do with my new business model now? So, thoda धीरे सहमे, हड़बड़ी ना हो, trends को देखें, and there are, as Shiparna ji is saying that in the sector itself, tourism में ही things have changed, and there are new avenues which are opening up. An entire study which I was going through, and I was talking to some of the big entrepreneurs there, that they are looking at from the hotel business, it's going to slowly move towards the homestay businesses. So, because that's going to be small, a little more protective, you can adjust according to that. So those are the elements. Buffet eating is going to be, I don't know, it's scary till now. So moving, so things are in the sector also, things are changing, trends are changing, and there are opportunities in the sector. You don't need to completely go out of the sector also. So that that is something that every individual as an entrepreneur, and as Sipranaji was talking about, look into your passion, what you feel like doing, and read the trends there. And there are brilliant opportunities right now coming. So my entire perspective is, and I think about the sectors, and yes, Sipranaji has talked really in depth about it.
Absolutely. And I think we can now move on to the question and answers from the questions that the attendees would be asking. We already have two questions coming up. And if any other attendee would like to ask anything, please type it in the chat box and I would be taking those. So Esili, she is asking how to use the social media platform to boost entrepreneurship. Anirban can take that.
See, social media in totality. So we have a lot of our interactions, thinking, debating, everything has gone online. And social media has been a powerful tool to do it. There are a lot of people who are doing businesses through social media, and it was happening before also. It just got a spurt in this reality. However, my entire thing would be, don't be too reliant on one. Tomorrow, there might be a lot of opportunities coming in other spaces also. The social media is also changing rapidly, and it will change rapidly in the next few months with a lot of players, right from Google to Geo. Everybody is doing a new trick in the market. So everybody needs to adjust to that. Also, social media platforms currently are doing a lot of discussion around entrepreneurship, talking around entrepreneurship. Ultimately, entrepreneurship, the best thing about entrepreneurship is that when reality is that you have to do it. Things have to, so talking has to end and doing has to start. So that is crucially important. So आप सब कुछ कर सकते हैं, लेकिन सारा बिजनेस सोशल मीडिया में नहीं कर सकते. तो don't be over reliant on one form. Even if you are into doing business online, you need to remember that at the back end, you need to have logistics, which is not going to be online. That is going to be offline in the field, in the market. If you are into handloom and handicraft, you might create a beautiful online platform, but the logistics has to be in the field. So those are realities so don't over focus on it, but yes, talk about it. There are so many more people who are into the social media. So creating awareness, building the market has become far more easier. And also people who are not comfortable with social media, they are also coming into social media because that has become a majburi kind, ki karna to padega hi. Some of the sessions that Dharan now is doing is online, and there are people that we are actually training on. So before the sessions, we are doing training on how to be on Zoom, how to look into different elements of it, because there is a requirement and we have to invest that. Even the entrepreneurs and the other individuals have to invest that. They are investing that much amount of time in learning all these new tools and taking them. So there's an opportunity, but my year would be, don't be over reliant. Usi mein business nahi ho sakta.
Absolutely. There has to be a fine blend actually. And we have to work on it. Yes, even in our education business, we use the social media platform for promotion and all, but then we cannot completely rely on it. We have to think other ways and other means of reaching out to our custom clients and our customers. Look, there's one question from Anjana Bhattacharjee. She's asking, we had a restaurant business, but due to COVID, the entire restaurant business is closed. Though we are now working on sanitizers, masks, etc. But on a slightly long term, what opportunities can we look into? We are confused and don't know how to go ahead. Who would want to take that? Dr. Shiparna?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's again, it's basically going by what we have already said, relook at your business, relook at your business model, relook at, can you start actually looking at cloud kitchen? Of course, there'll be again a lot of competition in cloud kitchen, but then since you already have the infrastructure in terms of knowledge, in terms of possibly the infrastructure for your kitchen, etc. Can we look at cloud kitchen as an answer? Even in cloud kitchen, can we have a niche there? Because since you run a restaurant, you're running a restaurant, can we have a niche in terms of supplying, delivering nutritional food? Because new market which is coming up in the COVID and the emerging market is healthy
Yeah.
food. So a healthy food could be an option where you could look into. People are getting extremely conscious about the nutrition, etc. So you can have a different menu altogether, which can be nutrition as well. This is something which has immediately come to our mind. And then another thing, earlier, the millennials were not so much conscious about nutrition. I mean, in terms of having healthy food, healthy snacks, etc. So even healthy snack can be a big market. I was just reading the other day. Snacking is a big market, particularly in India. So healthy snacks, you can look at that, creating healthy snacks, healthy nutritional value, create your own page by, giving the benefits of whatever traditionally we've been eating, etc. So food as a business, I don't think is ever going to die down. So these are initial hiccups, and depending on where your a restaurant is, if there's an opportunity for having something outdoor, possibly that's another option. You can, of course, that would depend on where you are located, but also looking at outdoor catering, etc. Outdoor as in, if you have some space creating where people can come and have a party, or breaking down the walls, etc. So look at options, because most of the restaurant business people are doing that. And then just don't go into the competition of going into, everyone is giving biryani, so I'll also serve biryani, momo, etc. Go into some niche products. That's what I can say. There's a demand for niche product, and food is something I think they will always, and also emphasize on the sanitation part of it, hygiene part of it. So that's how you can strategize. That something immediately comes. But the most important thing is, don't break your heart. Don't think we're feeling hopeless. There are a lot of people, read about them. Social media you can use by understanding as to what is happening in your sector, how people have reinvented themselves. So basically, it's a time to look and reinvent your business, and be a little extremely flexible at this moment. Be very flexible, both in terms of operations and in terms of your mindset also. Very important to be very flexible. Both your mind needs to be flexible and your operations also needs to be flexible. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shipan. I think that answers the question. Babu Crow has asked, I think Anirban can take this. What are the necessary steps for entrepreneurship startup in rural areas? He wants to know the necessary steps. Is it possible in the rural areas?
See, I would just wanted to add to what Sriparna ji was saying, is that hang on. I think Anjana had asked the question. Hang on, because things are changing very fast. In the urban spaces like Bombay, Delhi, food business has picked up again, big time. And the trend is going to come back. So I think the worries, it's more about psychologically hanging on, what she was talking of. And entrepreneurship startups in rural areas, I see and is it possible in rural areas? Obviously possible in the rural areas. There's nothing that stops anybody to start enterprises in rural areas. What are the necessary steps? I think the first necessary step is to you being, so an individual has to be, one, committed to an idea, then look at what are the resources available there. So the steps, I wouldn't say the steps is one, going to the registrar's office, two, going to the accounting. Those are not the first steps. The steps lies within you. So when you're looking at starting an enterprise, you have to bring that entrepreneurial thought process into it. And it comes naturally to some work on it, whatever. In rural areas, the opportunities are galore. You need to figure out how are you going to look at it, and look at what is your market. Is the rural area itself your market, like Sriparna ji was talking about, or do you want to link it to some external market and build systems accordingly? So there are also enterprises which has a lot of domestic market in rural market, and you can just get into those kind of businesses if you are not looking at getting into transportation and all of that issues of that. we in fact are, as we are talking, we are working on this concept of seeding grantpreneurs, where we are actually going to various areas. So we are actually trying to go into 5 states and seeding entrepreneurs in the rural areas who are initiating businesses in the rural areas. And it's like seeding is like हम जब सीड डालते हैं खेत में तो कुछ उगते हैं कुछ नहीं उगते हैं और जो उगते हैं उसके ऊपर फिर कितना कितना ध्यान दिया गया कितना पानी कितना sunlight, all of that becomes here. But it's important to seed also. So that's the entire concept with which we are working. रूरल एरियाज में ये इन्वेस्टमेंट करना बहुत ज़रूरी है और जो entrepreneurs who are from rural areas, it is very important that you believe and that you're as good, because somehow there is also a feeling that urban entrepreneurs are some separate breed and rural. So we want to really talk about that. It's really a big thing to be a rural entrepreneur. You are just doing business what is being done in the urban areas, but you are looking at the rural realities, what is the situation. Employment and the economy of the rural spaces is going to increase because of you as a rural entrepreneur. So to me, the necessary steps lies within the other things, which becomes the compliance and other things. It comes after that, and it will happen to you whenever you start ahead.
I may just like to add on to what Anirban has said, because it's itching, because we see so many rural projects everywhere, and there's a lack of basically startups, entrepreneurs, and taking advantage of the problems which are there and converting that into an opportunity. Let me just give you an example. For example, suppose we have something in Northeast, we have a lot of handloom clusters. Now, when we look at handloom clusters, you want to have a startup. What about major problem most of the time is the backward integration, which is getting the quality yarn. So even setting up a yarn bank professionally, where you give quality yarn at a good price, could be a business opportunity. Giving them, design support could be a business opportunity. Giving them market intelligence for them could be a business opportunity. So they're basically making them, even giving them lessons on photography. You are a photographer. You are very skilled in photography. So even giving them skills on how to upload your photos, etc. Because everywhere we are saying Amazon is tying up with Government of Assam, Flipkart is tying up, but that is not going to help anywhere, because unless and until at the grassroots people are aware as to what to do. We giving them ideas on how to be quality conscious, how do you understand quality. So these are basically small startups which will come up, solve problems in one pocket, go to a next pocket, again solve there. So there could be various opportunities like that. Look at, another area which we're talking about is honey. So why we're looking at, everyone is talking about Northeast honey as a big market. What about value addition in honey? We don't have any value addition. We are all breaking up the wax and throwing it away, where wax itself has a lot of. So look at those as business opportunities. Have startups in the rural is an immense opportunity for startups in the rural areas. Yeah.
Absolutely, Dr. Sriparna. One last question we have from Margaret Zinzu, and this is with regards to the NERES. She looks like that she started her business a little late, but she wanted to participate in NERES, but she was not because of the age bar that was there. So she was just wanting to know what would that be in the second NERES that is going to come up.
There's no age bar. There is no age bar. There are people beyond 60 also qualify.
Yes, right. So I didn't see any age bar. I don't know why she got that information. Here she writes, my journey in the traditional sector as entrepreneur started late, and we are, I think, since there was an age bar, is that going to be one of the conditions looking forward? So I think she's confused. There is no age bar.
In NERES winner, we have 2 co-founders who are both above 60. One has retired and started her business. There is one more who's plus 60, and they've ventured into, it's their own startup which they've started.
Yeah, so definitely Margaret can come in the second NERES. She can participate.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. So I think we've come to the end of the session. It was really wonderful to hear from you, all these tips for startups and how we are going to hang on there. And yes, even I got a lot of important tips, because I also have to hang on for this time when all our education institutions are closed and we are, working online. And yes, in order to be an entrepreneur, we have to have a flexible mind, a lot of fluidity, moving from one to the next, innovating, ideating, and also, shifting as per the needs. And as Dr. Shipona very rightly said, reinvention, keeping our minds open. Mr. Anirban had given us excellent strategies. And I think this webinar has a lot of takeaways for all the entrepreneurs who have joined us today. And I thank Dr. Shipona and Anirban for joining us today and really giving this insightful, ideas and sharing all that which is so beneficial for the entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for joining us. And I
Thank you,
thank all the
Vasavi.
attendees for joining us today. And they can definitely get in touch with you through IIE. Dr. Shiporna, she's in IIE. So anybody who wants assistance, Anirban is in the Haran now. So, the 3T second cohort is coming up, right?
Cohort is
Anirban?
done. Yes,
Yeah,
second
it's
cohort is
starting
done.
up. And for those who are already running their businesses and want to upscale, they can come to LBN, the Local Business Network. And today is our first launch webinar, and it's really wonderful. Thank you all. We'll be seeing you again soon with more tips on entrepreneurship and business generation. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Vasavi.
Thank you.